Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Like Katie said, I'm the IT manager for the City of Boca Raton. When I started with the city, I started as a business systems analyst. And after we implemented the accounts payable process, I got promoted to IT manager, and there were 3 more business analysts that were hired. So I want to thank Laserfiche for giving me the opportunity to express to you how the City of Boca Raton optimized their business process. The creation of the Lean Team. The City of Boca Raton created the Lean Team Steering Committee, or the Lean Team, to oversee all Laserfiche projects. The city uses the Lean methodology to project management, which increases customer value, eliminating waste, and continuously improving processes. Key city employees were trained on Lean principles for about 3 full days. Potential projects are prioritized by the Lean team after they're received. The city tackles the most visible projects, such as the accounts payable process, first. These processes affect many staff members, so automation has the greatest impact to those areas. More employees are able to see the tangible benefits and therefore get on board with the project. I was assigned to the accounts payable process as the lead business systems analyst. After the new process was implemented and management saw the benefits, the city decided to hire 3 more business analysts and create the workflow team, which I manage. Lean is about rethinking what we do and how we do it. Lean is a customer-centered approach that provides us with tools that help us utilize existing resources to identify areas for improvement by eliminating non-value-added activities. It is about working as a team, empowering employees to find improvement in processes and taking steps toward improvements. Kaizen, a Japanese term for continuous improvement or change for the better, typically is a small cross-functional team based on improvement efforts. Non-value-added activities are waste and consume resources but create no value in the eyes of the customer. Therefore, internal or external. There are 3 forms of waste, and they are transport, inventory, motion, waiting, overproducing, overprocessing, defects, and underutilizing people's abilities. 5S is a methodology for standardization, organization, and cleanliness. At the heart of the 5S in the Lean goal to reducing waste, the 5 words that makes the 5S are sort, straighten, shine, standardize, and sustain. Now I'm going to explain how the Lean process works at the City of Boca Raton. We encourage all employees to identify and share ideas, big or small, for improved efficiency and productivity in all areas. If they have an idea for a process improvement project, they will email their idea to the Lean Steering Committee program manager. A Lean Process Improvement Committee decides on which projects to pursue based on customer impact, financial leverage, impact on the departments, objective, time to implement, and the resources needed. We host a project kickoff meeting, and we invite the head of the department, key users, and information technology rep to attend. We introduce the key lean terms and get buy-in from managers. We use the SMART approach for project goals writing. Project goals are specific, measurable, obtainable, realistic, and time-based. At the end of the kickoff meeting, we all are on the same page and have a clear understanding of what the goals for the projects are. We conduct Learn to See sessions, which are going to the actual departments and seeing how they do things, because conference room discussions of processes are not as valuable as physical observation of the process. The team meets with the various city employees who walk us through his or her process and share their perspective on how the process could be improved. We track errors by understanding where the errors occur. For example, if there are certain questions on a form that employees or customers, they always get the wrong answer or they leave it blank, we consider those errors, so we find ways to eliminate those errors. The team also maps the current process, and the way we do it is that we do whiteboards. For example, this picture here was taken at the City Hall Council chambers, and we put whiteboards throughout the whole chamber, and then with sticky notes, we map the accounts payable process from beginning to end. We also develop swim lanes, value-added maps, and spaghetti diagrams. The swim lanes is where we can see who does what step on the process. We also use the value stream maps to understand the steps and the times that it takes for each step. The spaghetti diagram identifies the actual flow of the products or paper through the process, as if you're looking for an ice view, a bird's eye view. It provides what is happening, the amount of material that is handling, the storage areas that we have, the travel distance from one office to another, and the general wasted activities. After eliminating the non-value activities, we use Microsoft Visio to map the new lean process. We develop a project charter and a project plan and get approvals from the business, project manager, and the head of the department. At the end of the phase, we all have a complete set of documents that we can hand it to the business systems analysts for them to develop the solution using Laserfiche. During the development phase, we utilize Laserfiche forms, Laserfiche workflow, the record management or the record series on Laserfiche client, and we also use database lookups to different financial systems or payroll systems that we have in order to streamline the process. We also host multiple testing sessions throughout the developing stage, and we adjust the forms or the workflow to accommodate users' requests as we develop the solution. Testing duration depends on the project's complexity. We create a comprehensive testing plan. For example, the accounts payable process testing lasted several months. IT is the first one to test. The key users in the accounts payable process, the accounts payable manager, and the accounts payable clerks were the second one to test. And no users, like the department's requisitioners, were the last ones to test. After the testing is completed, we correct any issues that we find on the way, and we test again until no issues are found. We develop training guides which have step-by-step instructions and screenshots of the different processes. The business systems analyst and the process owner conducts in-person training sessions with all the users. We actually receive a good acceptance of the accounts payable process and the cooperation from all the departments on this process. The accounts payable manager and her staff are very pleased with the process, and we have stored about 70,000 electronic pages during the first year on the Laserfiche repository. The AP process received the Excellence Award for our Laserfiche vendor, MCCI, thank you, and the Bronze Matter Award from Laserfiche. And we're very proud of that. It was hard work, but it was all worth it. We published a monthly newsletter on the city intranet to describe the process and the steps that we were taking to develop the solution. After the training was completed, the city launched the process into production, making very small changes as needed. We've revisited the process to constantly improve. For example, sending emails to requisitioners to perform the receiver, and the requisitioner have moved to another department, we didn't have a correct email address. So we developed a process where if that email address kicks back, we can assign a new email address to the purchase order that is being received. Now I'm going to talk about how the city accounts payable lien process took effect. The accounts payable process before the lien process was a very manual process. We received paper invoices via fax, US mail, and personal hand delivered. After the check run, the accounts payable clerk were manually matching a pink copy of the check with a paper invoice. And then we used to store that paperwork on a storage area for 7 years. And that was an outside facility. So every time that somebody had a question on an invoice or a payment, they had to go and request that to be brought back to City Hall. The problem with the process were misplaced invoices, time-consuming, paper-intensive, manual routing process, records retention, there was none, and then the physical destruction of challenges. Because if they had this physical paper, they didn't want to delete or destroy that paper. So let's take a look at how the process looked before the lien team re-engineered the accounts payable process. We'll break it down the process into 4 broad steps: content capture, check for completeness and accuracy, review and approval, publish and preserving. So you will see the steps changing to a light blue color as I talk about them. The first part of any process is information capture. For the accounts payable process at the City of Boca Raton, this starts when the vendor fills out an electronic form located on the city internet site. The AP manager receives an automatic email and creates a vendor record on Songar Navaline, which is our financial system, and then changes a field on the metadata to complete. Then Laserfiche Workflow sends an automatic email to the vendor with one of 2 messages. either a vendor number and instructions on how to forward the invoices to the city, or a notification that the form is incomplete and the reason why, along with instructions for resubmittal. To give you an idea of what this part of the process looks like, here's a screenshot of the form that the vendor fills out to initiate the entire accounts payable process. We have made all fields required except the one optional field, which is the business name, so that we can assure that we can collect all the information that we need to create the vendor record on the financial system. On the second process, one information is initiated, captured from the vendor. Our clerks must ensure that the invoice and the vendor information is complete and accurate in this portion of the process. So the vendor sends an email with the invoice attached to a specific email address. In our case, it's invoices@myboca.us. So the vendor sends an email to that email address with the invoice attached. The email subject line identifies the vendor and the purchase order number. So we require that there is a specific format on that email subject, and it starts with the vendor name, the letter P, the letter O for purchase order, the number sign, and then the actual purchase order number. So that's how we grab that metadata. The accounts payable clerks then drags the email from Outlook and drops it on a folder called validation on the Laserfiche repository. And then they enter the invoice number and the dollar amount into the template fields. The email subject includes, like I said, the purchase order number, and then Laserfiche workflow performs a database lookup into our financial system to check if the purchase order is active. If the purchase order is an active purchase order, then it creates a folder on Laserfiche repository, and it stores the invoice on that folder. If the purchase order is inactive or is on other status that is not active, it will send an email to the vendor telling them that they'll have to resubmit their invoice with the correct purchase order number. So here's an example of an email that's sent to the vendor if the information was complete and ready to kick off our review process. You can see that Laserfiche automatically pulls the vendor number from the info metadata into the email notification, and we list the next step for the vendor to do. After being checked for accuracy and completeness, the invoice undergoes a review and approval. So at this step, the AP staff verifies the goods and services have been received on our financial system. If the staff member from the department hasn't entered the receiver, then the AP staff selects the send to department status, and this triggers an email to the staff member asking him or her to enter the receiver, and it will move the invoice to the send to department folder. If the staff member from the department has entered the receiver, then the AP staff changes the status of the invoice to ready for payment, and Laserfiche workflow moves the invoice to a folder in the repository by the invoice due date, which we actually get that invoice due date from our financial system. That's the data lookup that we do. So here you can see how the invoices being processed are stored in the system. We choose to organize the files by vendor name, and changed this organization from the final filing. We also included the metadata shown on the left, which is automatically applied to the document when it enters the system. We can quickly see in the metadata that the invoice associated with this metadata was sent to the financial department, but not yet approved or processed. So we have on the status of the invoice, we have a drop-down, and one of the options is send to department or send ready for payment or send to the vendor. And if the accounts payable manager decides that the invoice has to be sent to the vendor, she has an option to put comments on the metadata. And when she clicks Save and Send to Vendor, an email is sent to the vendor with why the invoice was rejected. For the final publishing and preserving section of the process, when the payment is issued, Laserfiche Quick Fields imports a copy of the check or the electronic fund transfer notification into Laserfiche. So we were able to create a PDF, which is a copy of the actual checks that goes to the vendor, or we made a copy of the electronic fund transfer notification that we sent to the vendor, and then with that PDF, we import into Laserfiche using Quick Fields. Now, employees can search for invoices and payments throughout the Laserfiche web link public portal. When the payment is issued, then we match the payment with the invoices, because on the metadata, we collect all the invoices that were paid with that payment. And then we go ahead and we read the repository and we search all the invoices that were paid with that payment, and we move them into a common folder on the record series area. The invoices and the payments are posted to a web portal shown, which is web links, so that any staff can search for invoices that they have interacted with. We added several searches. One is by purchase order number, the other one is by vendor number, and we have one by disbursement number. This is what the final product looks like. Our records are stored on the record series area, and they're organized by fiscal year and payment date. So retention policies are applied to the invoice and the payments. And the reason why we did it by fiscal year is because after 7 years of the payment, we can destroy that folder. And as you know, it doesn't happen automatically. There's a process where we'll print a report and it gets routed to the city clerk's office, and they approve the destruction of that folder. That's by Florida law. I don't know what other state has. Each payment date folder contains a subfolder for each one of the payments, and then the corresponding invoices that were paid on that check run, and a copy of the disbursement are on the same folder. So in this case, we have the invoice on the top, the payment on the top as a PDF, and we have the email that was sent from the vendor to us on the repository, and that email has the invoice attached to it. One of the results of obtaining the electronic version for the utility bill invoiced was the reduction of errors and time saved by copying and pasting dollar amounts instead of typing them one by one. Before, the accounts payable clerk will manually enter each bill dollar amount into Excel. The manual effort caused numerous errors, and it took about 2 hours. And that picture at the bottom is actually 1 month bill from Florida Power and Lighting. They used to send a box with, I think it was about 2,000 pages. So now we receive the bill electronically, and the accounts payable clerk, all she has to do is copy from the electronic version and copy into Excel. And that process now only takes 45 minutes instead of the 2 hours that was taking her previously. So we're currently working on automating the new hire process for human resources. This project is on the lean discovery phase. And we're also working on a leave and overtime request. And this process is on the testing phase. And the IT group, we have been testing it for a month. So we're going to roll it out to the city manager's office next week. And then after that, we're going to roll it out citywide. The Contact Us form, it's in the training phase. Right now, we have deployed one of the forms for the city clerk's office, and we're planning to deploy another form for the Development Services Department. And also, we have another form that we're working on, which is for business licenses. We're going to ask business owners to register online using a Laserfiche form. We're also working on a new computer access process and a field purchase order process. And those are also on the developing phase. We have received over 50 projects requests since we started the lean process. And they all have been prioritized. And I'm displaying on the left a sample of some of the projects that have been requested on non-specific order. Is there any questions? I do want to show you, if I may, do I have an internet connection? So what we did, it's not showing. I wanted to show you the City of Boca Raton internet site and where we added the forms. We decided that, for example, the Contact Us form was going to go under the first one that we deploy under the city clerk's office, because they're the ones that receive most of the requests. So under government, and city clerk's office, we created a public records request, and the form is under Contact Us. So when the citizens click on Contact Us, it will open a Laserfiche form where they will enter their request that what are they want to contact the city for. And then from here, after they submit the form, it sends an email to the city clerk's office telling them that a new form has been submitted. And then also the citizens, they get an email back saying that we received their form and that we're investigating their request. And then when the request is done, using a task that the city clerk's office received from forms, they complete that request. There is another form that we added to the website, and that was to initiate the accounts payable process. I'll show you what that is. It's not under police. Oh, it does work, okay. Thank you. Under financial services, they already had some forms that they had fillable PDFs, so they asked us to put it under forms and reports, and then they asked us to be the first form, so that vendors, when they come into the financial service website, they can click on additional vendor information and fill out the form. So as we were developing the form, we were getting feedbacks from the users, and one thing that we discovered is that we needed to have most of the fields required, because that's what it was needed for the record to be created on the financial system. So, yes, Chris. Hi.
This is all super fantastic. And
Thank you.
It's very impressive. Kudos. A couple quick questions. In the FP&L bills, you said that they had to copy and paste them. Have you looked into using quick fields to extract the text?
We have not. That's a good idea. We keep looking at the processes for ways to improve it, and that's one of the things we wanted to do. We actually asked FP&L if they could send us some kind of electronic file, but they denied that. So we're working with what we receive. Yeah.
Also, regarding the business licenses?
Yes.
I'm not sure. Does that form require a signature? And if so, are you using any kind of e-signature technology?
I'm not on that project, but I believe that it doesn't require a signature at the beginning. It might require a signature later on. So I think that's something that they're working on getting an e-signature. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. I got two questions now. The demo, maybe they can. The first one was regarding the lean process. You showed projects, current projects, and future projects. And you said there are no particular order, but y'all go through a prioritization phase. How do you kind of quickly, I guess, talk us through that? I mean, obviously, let me ask you this: so if you got 20 projects, one of them has to be number one, right? You can't have like 3 number one projects.
Yes. Yeah, and they are prioritized. I just didn't want to show on the screen which one are going to be worked next, because I didn't want to offend anybody.
Does that occur like at the discovery phase? Is that the first thing y'all discuss?
Right. Well, the thing is that we have the steering committee, so they meet when a new project comes in, and then they have a matrix, and it's based like on how long would it take, how many resources will take, the complexity of the project, and then based on that matrix, they come up with a number for each project. Then that number, the higher it is, then the more priority that it takes. So that moves up to the top of the list.
Has any two numbers been exactly the same and then a point flip, or how do you handle that scenario?
There is representation from all the departments that are involved for all the projects. So I guess, everybody have to speak of their own needs. And then whoever can express more of the need, then that one wins.
Another one, just real quick on the clerk, the city clerk, and the open records request. And I know every state's a little bit different, but does it meet Florida state requirements that if a request has been made, that within 10, like in Texas, you have to have a request back that within 10 days it's being, are you sending that email through your forms and workflow? Does that automatically meet that requirement in the state of Florida? Like where you now acknowledge that a request has been made and that we're working on it?
I think are you referring to the public records request?
Yes.
Yes. Then they email back telling them we're working on it. But then going with that also, you have to actually produce some response documents for that request. And that's when the deadline comes in, that you have to produce those documents. I think the statute said on a reasonable amount of time.
Reasonable?
Reasonable.
Yeah.
So it's very, yeah.
But it's 10 days to respond.
To respond.
Not to deliver.
Right.
But maybe within 10 days you have to have, we think this will take 2 months or something like that, right?
Right. You can
But
always.
that's the responsibility then of the city clerk, no longer part of the form
Right.
that you have to open.
Yes.
But you have like workflow time intervals that are, escalating as it approaches that 10-day mark.
Right. We do have reminders for the receivers on the accounts payable process if after 7 days they have not received the goods, and we do have the invoice, so we mean that the goods were delivered, then we send a reminder email to do the receiver. So that's doable. Any other questions? Yes.
I think that there are quite a few folks from city government organizations in the room. Would you mind just sharing a little bit more about how you partnered with the National League of Cities when you formed the lead team and some of the trainings they provided for you guys?
Sure, why not? Yeah, so the city decided that the processes that the departments were doing were very paper intensive. There was a lot of paper floating around, so they wanted to go paperless. So we team up with the League of Cities, and what we decided to do was do a training to key employees, and of course it included all the departments, and IT was one of the ones that were leading that training. And we met on just the city library, and we had 3 full days on the lean process and what it is, and the tools that we can use to streamline processes. And one of the tools, like I said, was to map the current process on a visual way with sticky notes. So you see sticky notes, it tells you what each step does. And when people see that, they're like, well, they question it. So why are you doing this? Why don't you do it this way? And they start talking about things that we could do to streamline the process, and things that we didn't need. For example, for an approval of an invoice, I think that they were requiring like 3 signatures. We're like, why are we doing that? Nobody said we ever had to do that. We could do it electronically, send it to the department. If they receive it, that's proof that the goods were here. So things like that we could find out how to eliminate. Then when we sat down on another room, we wanted to map the new process. So those sticky notes that we decided they added no value, which, by the way, it had like a red dot on it. We put a red dot on the activities that we found had no value to the process. Then on the new process, we eliminated those steps, and then the process went a lot smoother from there. And then after everybody got trained, then everybody went to their own department, and that's when they put their thinking hats and said, so what are we doing that we can improve? What processes are we doing? And some of the processes involve more than one department. So there were department meetings of, okay, I send you this paper, what do you do with it? So, well, I never look at it. So why send the paper then? Things like that we could find out how to eliminate activities that added no value. So after the accounts payable process was implemented, then that's when the city actually said, yeah, we have to move forward with this and see what other processes we could do to streamline and to make things smoother. Any questions on that?
Just wondering who in the end has a final say or final approval that says, yes, this is the new process we're going to implement, because there's a lot of vested proprietary interest in various aspects and people don't give up old habits.
Yes. The city manager, he's the one that decides, if the project should move forward or not. And he goes to those meetings for the Lean Steering Committee. Any other questions? Okay.
Are you using JavaScript behind this form, or what's the form?
We are using JavaScript. We have, one of the things we wanted to do was that all the forms, we wanted to look the same. So we're using some JavaScript for that, and also some of the fields we wanted to either be on a specific size or a particular area on the form. So we use JavaScript for that. We do have some fields behind the scenes that you don't see here, but we use it later on for workflow or processes. Yeah, we find it that JavaScript, sometimes you have to use it.
Yeah, you have horizontal fields, and I don't think you could do that in the forms builder.
Not on, yeah, right. And some fields, for example, if you click on one field, it opens other fields. So I could show you, I think, one of them. For example, if you click that you have the same address, mailing address, have the billing address, you click here on the yes, and then it will copy those fields. I think on the 1099 reporting, we asked that question, so if the answer yes, it opens other fields. Let's see this one. So if you answer that you want to use your employee ID number, it opens that field. If you want to use your social, then it opens two fields. So yeah, we had to use either JavaScript to do that.
Very nice.
Thank you.
What percentage, do you know what percentage of your invoices have POs? Do all of them have a PO, or do you get still?
Well, we do get some that are not, that don't have the PO, but most of them do. It's a requirement of the city now. If a vendor want to do business with us, they have to send the invoice electronically. So on the subject line, the purchase order number has to be there. If not, an automatic email goes out to the vendor, and it's up to them to send us the correct PO number. Any other questions? Well, I'm going to be around for a little while, so if you have any other questions, you can come up to the podium. I'll be here. Thank you.